Hey everyone, this is Warren with unashamedofjesus.org, and welcome to another live stream. Today, the topic is going to be: Is Jesus the first horseman? And that's going to be our topic for today. Um, as always, if you could please like and subscribe and share my content to get the gospel message out there, it would be greatly appreciated. And it's been a while since I did a live stream, I think. So um, we'll get right into it. So let me get rid of this ticker and go here. And so let me share my content. I'll share my screen. And so a lot of people, with the way the world is today, a lot of people are diving into the book of Revelation. A lot of people are contemplating, the end times, what's going on. And so this is an article I wrote a couple of years ago about is Jesus the first horseman? And I did write this in rebuttal of, because there are many uh, Christian groups who believe that Jesus is the first horseman, which I believe is incorrect. Spoiler alert, um, Jesus is not the first horseman, that is the Antichrist. And that's what we're going to take a look at and dive into why we're going to compare Revelation chapter 6 with Matthew chapter 24, and you kind of get a clearer idea of why Jesus is not the first horseman. And so I was comparing, if you see in my article here, and you can see this article on unashamedofjesus.org, and it's in the Jehovah Witness section. And because this is a belief of the Jehovah Witnesses that Jesus is the first horseman. And so we're going to take a look at the scriptures. So when we look at the scriptures here I have in the article, I compare the Jehovah Witness Bible, the New World Translation, with the King James Bible, because they're the two translations that they kind of accept. And the King James is accepted, universally pretty much. But I also compare their scriptures just to be fair. Okay, so when we look at Revelation chapter 6 and start with verse 1, I'm going to read from the King James. It says, "And I saw when the Lamb opened one of the seals, I heard, as was a noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, 'Come and see.' And I saw, behold, a white horse, and he sat on him, whom had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and went forth conquering to conquer." Now, the first contradiction here, if you're going to say that Jesus is the first horseman, is that notice in verse 1, it says, "The Lamb opened one of the seals." Who is the Lamb? Well, we know the Lamb is Jesus Christ, right? Um, so if you're going to say that Jesus is also the first horseman, then Jesus is basically announcing himself, which it doesn't make sense. Okay, he's opening his own seal, so that really doesn't make sense. So that's a detail there just to look at. But the next thing you also want to see here in the detail here about this is that the first horseman has a bow. He's carrying a bow, okay, and instead of a sword, okay, and with the symbolism of the bow in the Bible is deceit. And so for a reference for this, you could look at Psalm, and I have them referenced right here. If you look at Psalm 64 3 to 4, or verse 3 to 4, Hosea 7, chapter 7, verse 16, Jeremiah chapter 9, verse 3, and Psalm 78, 56 through 57. And this will show you the reference that in the Bible, a bow is referenced for deceit. And so this would not be Jesus Christ. This would be the Antichrist. So next thing you want to do is, if you take a look at Matthew chapter 24, and you look at Jesus' teachings and compare them to Revelation chapter 6, they match each other very well. And the four signs of the end line up with the four horsemen, okay? And so and if you're totally lost right now, just try to follow along with me. I'll try to clear this up for you. So we're talking about four horsemen, okay? And we're talking about, if you go to Matthew chapter 24, Jesus is talking about four signs of the end. And basically, they're the same thing. The four horsemen and the four signs are basically identical. And if you look at in the Bible, you can see that. So let's just read. If you look at Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 and 5, it says, Jesus said to him, take heed that no one deceives you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. Who is this? This is the first horseman. This is the first sign. This is the Antichrist. Okay, so Matthew 24, verses 4 to 5 is warning you about the first horseman. It is the Antichrist. There are many who will come in my name. And that's a thing. And that's why this is important teaching. This is why I'm doing this, is because when the first horseman comes, many people are going to be deceived, including Christians. There are going to be a lot of people who fall for the first horseman, who believe that some will actually believe it is Jesus Christ himself. And many are going to fall to his deceit. And that's why it's important to understand this teaching. Okay, Jesus warns you here in Matthew 24. Okay, so I said there's going to be four signs of the end, and this will line up with the four horsemen. Okay, the first sign is, the first horseman is the Antichrist. Now, we can argue, now, when we talk about the Antichrist, I know, a lot of people who are preterists will say that, we could argue that many people are the Antichrist, or that Nero, Caesar were all the Antichrist, whatever. But I still believe that there's going to be the final Antichrist of the four horsemen is yet to come. And it's going to be on a grander scale. And Paul talks about it in Thessalonians, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But I guarantee that the first horseman is not Jesus Christ himself. Now, we look at the second sign, okay? If you look at Matthew 24, verse 6, and you will hear of wars, rumors of wars, you'll not be troubled, for all these things come to pass, but the end is not yet. Now, if you look at Revelation chapter 6, verses 3 through 4, what does it say? He opened the second seal. He heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went another horse that was red, and power was given to him. And he sat, and therefore to take peace from the earth. Take peace from the earth. What's the second horseman? Is war. And they shall kill one another, and they will be given unto a great sword. So notice that. Matthew 24, 6, Jesus says the second sign of the end is the war. Revelation chapter 6, the second horseman is what? Is the red, is take the peace from the earth, they shall kill one another, is war. The second horseman is war. Matthew 24 and Revelation 6 line up perfectly against each other. The next one, Revelation, if you go to Revelation chapter 6, verses 5 through 6, the third horse, what does it say? He opened the third seal. I heard the third beast say, come and see. I beheld a black horse, and he sat in him a pair of balances in his hand, and lo, a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. See, they hurt not the oil and the wine. So this is the horse of famine, right? And what does Jesus say in Matthew 24, 7? Nation rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilence, earthquakes, divers places. So again, Matthew 24, Revelation 6 line up perfectly again. The third horse is famine. Okay, Revelation 6 again. He opened up the fourth seal, and heard the voice of the fourth beast say, "Come and see." And I looked, behold, a pale horse, and the name of his sat on it was Death, and hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, killed with sword. So the fourth horse is death. And what does Jesus say in Matthew 24:9? That people will hand you over to tribulation and kill you, and you'll be hated for the nation. So the fourth horseman is death. So notice that the four horsemen and the four signs in Matthew 24 line up perfectly with each other. I mean, is that a coincidence? No, it is not. Jesus, and so this brings another thing that, many people who hold the preterist view will say that Matthew 24 was fulfilled with the destruction of the temple, and I could see parts of it, but this lines up perfectly with Revelation 6. Jesus is prophesying about the four horsemen, the four signs of the end. Let's continue. So I want to bring up some facts here to show you why the first horseman will not be Jesus. So Revelation, if you go to Revelation 19, we see that it talks about Jesus. This is Revelation 19. This is Jesus coming on the white horse. So again, why would that make sense? Why would Jesus be coming twice? If Jesus was the first horseman in Revelation 6, why would he coming back again in Revelation 19? Because it's not Jesus in Revelation 6. It is the Antichrist. So here's 7 facts I want you to show you why it is not Jesus as the first horseman. Number 1, the Antichrist is carrying a bow, like we said, while Jesus is carrying the sword in Revelation 19:15. Okay, and I'm going to bring up Revelation 19 while we're talking about this so we can read that together. And I'll keep going over to my list here because this computer takes a while sometimes to load things. But anyway, the second point, the Antichrist is riding on earth while Jesus was riding from heaven. Revelation chapter 19, verse 11. The third point, the Antichrist has one crown on his head from Revelation 6, while Jesus has many crowns on his head in Revelation 19:12. And so this is what it's describing Jesus in Revelation 19, and it's not the same in Revelation 6 for a reason, because it's not the same person. The fourth point, the Antichrist is not identified as Jesus, while Jesus is clearly identified in Revelation 19. And if I could bring up Revelation 19, that'd be great, but my computer has other ideas. Okay, there it is. It's getting there. Okay. The fifth point, the Antichrist is alone, while Jesus is with many followers, also on horses, Revelation 19:14. And so once I have Revelation open, I'm going to go back and show you exactly these scriptures. Okay, so let me just finish the list. Number 6, the Antichrist does not have a scepter. Remember, the scepter is a symbolic of royalty, of kingship. Jesus is King of Kings. The Antichrist of Revelation 6 does not have the scepter, while Jesus rules with a rod of iron in Revelation 19:15. And in Revelation 19:16, the Antichrist has no identification Again, while Jesus is clearly identified as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So, now that I have this open, let's see if I share. I'm going to share my other tab. I'm going to share Revelation 19. Okay, so the first point, I'm going to go to Revelation 19:11. It says, "Now I saw heaven opened, behold, a white horse, and he sat on him, was called faithful and true and righteous. He judges and makes war." So we see Revelation 19, we see Christ coming from heaven on the white horse. Okay? Verse 12, we see his eyes were like flames of fire. We know this is Jesus Christ because anyone who has studied the Bible has seen this description multiple times. And on his head were many crowns. Okay? The Antichrist in Revelation 6 had just one. His name in verse 13, his name is called the Word of God. Well, we know who that is. That's Jesus Christ. So Jesus is clearly identified here in Revelation 19, where the Antichrist in Revelation 6 is not identified at all. We have no idea who it is. In verse 14, his armies in heaven clothed with white linen follow him on white horses. So Jesus in Revelation 19, when he comes, is followed by many followers, while the Antichrist in Revelation 6 has no followers whatsoever. And we just keep going on. Out of his mouth comes a sharp sword which strikes the nations. He himself will rule with a rod of iron. Right? Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, clearly identified. And here we see in verse 16, clearly identified. Jesus is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Revelation 6 does not identify the horseman as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, because the first horseman is the Antichrist, while Jesus is in Revelation 19. Now, I'm going to go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, because that is where it talks about the son of perdition. And this is the Antichrist, Revelation 6, the first horseman. And this is what Paul talks about. "Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together with him, we ask you not to soon be shaken in mind or troubled either by spirit or by word or by letter, as for the day of Christ had come. Read verse 3 here. Let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first." So the falling away, remember we went through Matthew chapter 24. Jesus mentioned the four things of the end of days, and Revelation 6 it lines up perfectly with Revelation 6 and the four horsemen. Okay, and this is probably the same thing that Paul's talking about here. "And the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition." This is the Antichrist, and this is the first horseman in Revelation 6. He who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God and that is worship, and he sits at God in the temple, showing himself that he is God. And so it's important to understand this thing, because when the Antichrist does come, the first horseman from Revelation 6, there are going to be many people who are deceived by him. As Jesus warned in Matthew 24, there are going to be many people who call the Antichrist Jesus Christ himself. They're going to be that deceived that they're actually going to think it's Christ. And that's why I'm doing this teaching, because there are many Christians or groups, and example, Jehovah's Witnesses, who believe the first horseman is Jesus Christ. And that is simply not true. And it's not biblical. And it's a great deception. And it's something you have to be aware of and ready for, because when the son of perdition comes, the first horseman, it's going to be a great deception. And there's going to be a great falling away. So it's important to understand this. Do you remember that when I still told you these things, and now that you know what is straining you may be revealed in his own time, for the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Okay? And then the lawless one will be revealed, from whom the Lord will consume. The lawless one will be revealed eventually. Revelation 6. Right? Go back. If we go to Revelation 6, it is the Antichrist. And this is what Paul's talking about. This is what Jesus talked about in Revelation chapter 4. If you look at verses 1 and 2, and behold, a white horse who sat up with a bow. And remember, we said with a bow is deceit, and a crown was given to him. And he went out conquering and to conquer. And this is the Antichrist. This is the son of perdition that is going to come in from Revelation 6. And so to go back to my list, let me stop sharing this one. I'm going to share my list again, and you could check this article out on my website, unashamedofjesus.org. And this is the list that you know the Antichrist from Revelation 6 is not Jesus from Revelation 19. And these are the differences right here that I went over. So it's very clear to me that the first horseman is the Antichrist. It's not Jesus. And it's important that you are not deceived. It's important that you keep watch and do not fall for the false religion and the great deception that's about to come. And we see a lot of Christians who are deceived today already. We see great falling away in the churches today already, with false doctrines and lawlessness already. Remember what Jesus said about lawlessness in Matthew chapter 7. Depart from me, you who workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. We have to be aware. We have to stay alert. We have to, and the main way to do this is to keep studying your Bible. So for this, I would reference Revelation 6, Matthew 24, 2 Thessalonians 2, and Revelation 19. And that will put it all together for you. Who are the four horsemen? Why the first horseman is the Antichrist. So if you have any questions or comments, I can answer them. But that's what I have for today for my presentation. Let's see. Unfortunately, I don't think StreamYard is still working with Twitter. When I get Twitter comments, so I do not see those comments. I think I only see the comments from YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the chat now. Otherwise, you can contact me. You can go on my website, unashamedofjesus.org, and there's a contact form, or you could email me directly at unashamedofyeshua@gmail.com. Of course, as always, please like and subscribe and share this content. to keep getting the gospel message out there. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen in. And if you want to call a show here, let me. So until next time, I hope you have a good day and God bless you all.